Smoke began to rise from the burning trees. Little critters scurried past a musker named Rain. Rain, who was lying on her side injured, glanced around at the forest. Her vision was blurry, but she could make out the dead bodies of muskers, her own tribe mates. Their blue feathers covered in blood and ashes. The last thing she could remember was the pain that pierced through when a Gaidoa stabbed through her body with its long claws. The pain still lingered as the wounds were still open, oozing out blood. The Gaidoa's red scales was the last thing she saw before going unconscious. Angered, Rain forced herself up. I will get revenge, and I will kill every last one of them if that means dying to do it. My tribe will not go down like this. She began to walk forward, ignoring the pain from the pierced holes in her stomach. The forest around her was burned. No color was left, other than smoke, fire, and dead bodies. Rain had little to no hope left. Her tribe was full of fluffy blue cuddlebugs, and there was no way they could win a war against red, scaly, long-nailed freaks. She remembered when Gaidoas declared war and all her tribe could do was run. Half of them fought and died. Their leader wasn't much of a help either, protecting the tribe, spreading rumors about Gaidoas and breaking many rules both tribes had settled. Rain felt angry for once at her own tribe. If we were not so gullible to anything and everything, maybe then we'd still be alive. Then also having a smart leader, Rain thought with a snort. She shook off a piece of bark that stuck to her horn and slapped her tail against a tree to remove feathers that were engulfed in flames. Rain's blue feathers didn't seem so blue anymore, as ashes covered most of her feathers, making her look more gray. Rain heard a sound coming from up ahead, and she steadied herself for another attack. Her heart pounded as Rain dug her talons into the dirt, feeling very unbalanced. "Help me," a voice called out desperately. Rain's eyes widened. The worst possible thing that could happen was now happening. Storm, a young musker, was being chased by a Gaidoa. Storm was the closest thing Rain had to family, and she couldn't lose more than she already did, not in front of her at least. Fear rushed over Rain, and she bolted towards Storm. "Storm, come to me," she shouted, as she ran as fast as her wounds would let her. The Gaidoa was gaining on Storm. It was so focused that it did not see Rain, who ran into his side, knocking him over. Storm stopped. His eyes were wide. "Rain, I'm scared. I don't want to die. I don't want you to die." Rain didn't respond as she pinned down the Gaidoa, her eyes full of hatred as she sliced open its neck and backed off. Storm was terrified and ran to her, hiding his face as Rain watched the Gaidoa slowly die in pain. After it laid motionless, she glanced down at Storm. He was shaking and she hugged him warmly, knowing this would be their last moments together. "Storm, you need to go. Run far away. It's not safe here, not anymore," Rain told him with tears running down her face. Storm backed up looking at her. Her blood was all over his face from him burying his face into her belly. His eyes were wide. "You're not gonna make it, are you?" Storm asked with pain in his voice. She looked down, unable to answer his question. "I can find leaves, we can patch up the wound, and we can run away together and have a life somewhere in the mountains, just you and me," he told her as he began to collect leaves on the ground. She grabbed the leaves and put them on the ground. "You must live a life without me now, Storm. This is my destiny, not yours. You must stay alive for me and the sake of your tribe." Storm could only look at Rain with a clouded expression. "I can't leave." "I said go," Rain interrupted him with a snarl. Storm flinched but didn't say any more and gave her one last look before running away through the rubble. She felt hopeful as she watched him escape. She collapsed, coughing from the smoke that fell from the trees. She started to give up, but the thought of Storm and what might happen if they found him scared her. She needed to buy Storm some time, so she forced herself up and walked toward the sounds of the snarls and screams. Dead bodies of muskers, her own tribe-mates, and their enemies, the Gaidoas, laid motionless around her as she pushed her way through the smoke and fire. She yelled in pain as a branch fell on her hind leg, fully inflamed with fire. She quickly brushed it off with her talons and began to pat her hind leg to put the fire out. She pushed forward, desperate to draw the enemy's attention. She made it up a hill and caught a glimpse of other muskers being outnumbered by Gaidoas. Her tribe was fighting bravely against a fern-plated beast who had red scales that looked like they were flaming from the glow of the fire amongst them. Even though it was hard to make out how many, or most of the Gaidoas, she could see the hatred that glimmered in their amber eyes. All of them had an amused look on their face as they started to close in on the 4 muskers who had all serious injuries. Rain knew even with her help they would fall from the Gaidoas, but she wanted to die a hero. She wanted to die helping her tribe in the last moments. "I'm coming," she wanted to yell to her tribe mates, but she knew she needed to get closer in order for her to be much help at all. She focused all her thoughts on the war and pushed away the pain as she bolted forward with her teeth bared. She pounced on the largest Gaidoa, latching onto his neck. He stumbled back in shock. His red, hard scales on his back made it hard for Rain to hold on, and her wounds did not help it either. other muskers saw that the Gaidawas had all their attention on their leader as they began to make their way toward him. The largest musker slid in front of one of the Gaidawas, blocking its path to Rain. The rest of the muskers followed, blocking as many Gaidawas as they could. Rain felt a full set of teeth grab onto her tail as one of the Gaidawas made past the others, who were losing their upper hand pretty quickly. She let go, turning to face the second Gaidawa. It was very short lengthwise and stubby as it stood on its 2 feet, glaring at her. It swiped its long claws at Rain, but she dodged, slowly backing up to think of a plan. The leader was already closing in on the others with the other Gaidawas, as if Rain didn't even attack him. She quickly glanced at her trimates, who were slowly giving out as they once again got herded into a corner. She looked up at a tree next to the Gaidawa, who was steadying itself for another blow. As it went for another swipe, she pounced forward, avoiding its claws and jumping onto its back, only for a quick moment to push herself high up in the trees above. The Gaidawa, now angered, snarled, looking up at Rain with its frills extended. The air became thicker from the smoke the higher she got, and it made it harder for her to see. She leaped to the next tree, digging her claws in as she made her way to the now cornered trimates. Her heart pounded in her chest as she struggled for air. She prepared herself for another leap, but lost her grip when a huge branch came crashing down from the tree she was in, taking her with it. She felt a sharp pain as she landed with a thud under the heavy branch. She couldn't move any of her muscles, and her breathing now became shallow. She looked over at the corner her trimates were at as she began to lose unconsciousness. She thought of Storm as she began to let the darkness overtake her. "Storm, I hope you're safe," she thought, closing her eyes as she drifted into her final sleep. Storm bolted through the forest. His heart was pounding as he began to run out of breath. Rain's words echoed throughout his head as she pushed himself forward. The forest began to clear as a field laid ahead. "I hope Rain is still alive," he thought as he looked back at the path he took, hoping desperately that Rain would walk out of the smoke and run to him for the biggest hug ever, bigger than the last one she gave before he ran. Guilt spreaded as he thought of his trimates and his learnings, who told him all he would be good at was running away. They always would tease him saying, "I bet you're an orphan because you ran when your mommy and daddy needed you." Nah, they probably abandoned him knowing how much of a loser he'd grow up to be, but Storm pushed the thoughts away. "At least I'm not dead meat right now," he thought in response to his flashbacks. He knew it was a terrible thought, but he couldn't help but not feel bad for these such monsters. He snapped himself out of his thoughts and he ran away from the fire in hopes to find some help. He took a deep breath once he passed almost the whole fire, fresh air. He forgot what it was since yesterday when the town went into flames. He noticed other creatures that were not muskers bolting to the forest. Most of them took flight. They had black shimmery coats on their body and scales on the end of their tails and legs. They had spikes that ran all the way down their back, ending with a leaf-like blade at the end of their tails. Luckily, he spotted no Gaidawas in the group of shiny creatures. All of them were a Gilach, a creature that loves to sleep all day and party at night. The tribe was known for throwing the best parties. Storm remembered hearing the story that they threw such a huge party once, every tribe in the world came to it. Other than personality, they seemed very scary, even though they never joined into wars and are on good terms with literally every tribe. Most of them have huge horns that had some magical string that they could produce from their talons that hung from their horns, making them look like fireflies in the night. Storm never met one up close, but remembered seeing one enter camp once to talk to some old musker. They were very hard to spot with their skinny-like dragon structure and the fact that most of them blended into the night sky. He spotted a small den and sneakily ran towards it, only thinking about a place to hide. His belly growled, but he curled up inside of a tiny cave and watched as the moon started to rise. The forest was still bright from afar, as its fire still burned on. Storm looked over at the forest that he once called home, as it burned to the ground. He wrapped his tail around his body, curling up as he forced himself to sleep.